ASEAN leaders signed declaration to set up ASEAN community. Vietnam and Germany seek to foster economic ties. Hello and thank you for tuning into another episode of Beastline brought to you by VTV International. My name is Ling Hung. As usual, we start with several highlights in the economic scene from the past week. Prime Minister Nguyễn Tấn Dũng joined other 9 ASEAN leaders on November 22nd in signing the 2015 Kuala Lumpur Declaration on ASEAN Community Establishment. With this declaration, the ASEAN community will be officially established on December 31st this year. It will come into being based on 3 pillars: the security community, the economic community, and socio-cultural community. ASEAN member countries are wrapping up their preparations so that starting from January 1st next year, ASEAN's 10 member states will be a single market, opening up a market that has a combined population of 630 million. A Vietnam Eurasian Economic Union or EEU business forum was held in Hanoi on November 25th. About 100 companies from Vietnam and 5 countries from the EEU joined the event. The Eurasian Economic Union comprises of Russia, Kazakhstan, Belarus, Armenia, and Kyrgyzstan, all of which are Vietnam's trading partners. Trade between Vietnam and the EEU posted an annual growth of 5 to 6%, reaching $4.2 billion in 2014. However, the figure remains modest compared with demands for further trade ties. November's Consumer Price Index, or CPI, picked up 0.07% from the previous month and 0.34% from the same period last year. This is the lowest rise in the past decade, according to the General Statistics Office. The figures also pointed out factors that curbed the latest CPI rise, including a reduction in petrol and diesel prices, as well as falling steel prices and public transport costs. Next month's CPI is expected to rise from 0.8 to 0.9% from last December or even higher. Vietnam will become the 10th largest exporter in the world by 2050, according to a new report by HSBC. According to the report, Vietnam's export revenue could reach $1,437 billion after China, the United States, Germany, South Korea, India, Mexico, France, Japan, and Singapore. Foreign investors who buy shares in Vietnamese businesses will no longer have to deal with procedures involved in investment certification. This is according to Decree 118, which takes effect on November 27th. Following the new decree, the government said it would provide support and incentives to investment projects involved in high-tech nurseries, biotechnology development, IT software manufacturing, and recycled and clean energy production. Da Nang International Airport welcomed its 6th millionth passenger on a flight from Ho Chi Minh City on November 24th. Da Nang International Airport is the country's 3rd international airport and now serves 3 domestic airlines and 13 international airlines. The terminal processes 130 flights and 18,000 passengers daily. Work recently began on a new terminal which will boost capacity for the airport. The number of newly established enterprises may increase to a record high of 94,000 this year, according to the Ministry of Planning and Investment. The number of enterprises entering the market over the 5 months has continued to rise. The revised law on enterprises took effect on July 1st, replacing the 2005 Enterprise Law. In just 5 months, 7,000 enterprises were set up, while over 40,000 have registered for licenses. Those are what have made headlines in the economic scene from the past week. Up next, we'll talk about the prospects of Vietnam-Germany economic ties in our crosstalk. After 40 years of diplomatic ties and 4 years since the establishment of a bilateral strategic partnership, Vietnam and Germany have seen rapid development in bilateral cooperation, especially in trade and investment. Figures show that as of June this year, total trade turnover between the two countries reached nearly $8 billion, accounting for about 3% of Vietnam's total trade. The potential to increase bilateral trade volume was strongly emphasized among leaders from both sides during the official visit to Germany by State President Trương Tấn Sang earlier this week. On this occasion, we would like to discuss the prospects of Vietnam and Germany bilateral economic ties in further detail with Mr. Hans-Jörg Brunner, Chargé d'Affaires at German Embassy in Hanoi. But before that, let's take a look at the following clip.
For several years, Germany has been Vietnam's biggest trade partners in the European Union, making up nearly 20% of Vietnam's export turnover in the EU market. As of October 2015, Germany's investment in Vietnam has stayed at around $1.4 billion, ranking fifth in the EU. Earlier this week, State President Trương Tấn Sang's official visit to Germany marked an important milestone in bilateral relations as the first visit by a Vietnamese president during the 40 years of diplomatic ties. During his visit, State President Sang was welcomed at separate meetings with his German counterpart Joachim Gauck and German Chancellor Angela Merkel. Leaders from both sides note with satisfaction that trade and investment ties continue to make positive progress, with aims to lift two-way trade turnovers to between $15 billion and $20 billion by 2020. They concurred to maintain Germany's top place among Vietnam's economic partners, especially when the EU-Vietnam Free Trade Agreement is to be signed soon, offering the best possible conditions for their enterprises to tighten cooperation. At a business forum held in Frankfurt, President Trương Tấn Sang spoke highly of opportunities for businesses in both countries to embrace cooperation, particularly in the fields of infrastructure, high technologies, processing industries, and energy production. Nearly 100 Vietnamese business and 120 German firms attended the forum as evident for the increasing interest of economic cooperation among investors of the two sides.
Mr. Hans-Jörg Brunner, thank you very much for joining our show today.
It's a pleasure to be here.
First of all, Vietnam and Germany are determined to foster investment links as evident in the growth of investment flows and the conferences and various bilateral meetings and conferences held recently. Drawing from your experience, could you share with us why are more and more German investors looking to invest in Vietnam?
Well, I think Vietnam is becoming a more and more interesting investment place and marketplace for German companies. So far, we have about 300 German companies operating in Vietnam, and the number is increasing. And the great interest which German companies have in Vietnam can be shown by two events. Last year, in Ho Chi Minh City, we had the Asia-Pacific Conference of German Business, and over 850 German businessmen were attending this conference. This shows the great interest of German business in Vietnam and in the entire region. And in addition to this, this year we are celebrating 40 years of diplomatic relations, and the highlight of this anniversary was the visit of your president to Germany, which happened during the last 3 days. And it was very important. He met with our president, Mr. Gauck, with Chancellor Merkel and with Foreign Minister Steinmeier, and also a very important event business-wise was the economic conference, the business conference in Frankfurt, and there were about 120 companies attending from Germany and almost 100 companies from Vietnam. So this shows how big the interest is in Vietnam.
So far, what sectors have been at the forefront of German investment activities in Vietnam?
Well, I think Vietnam is an expanding economy, and for German business, all the sectors are of interest. There are no very special sectors, but we cover, the German business covers almost all sectors which are operating in Vietnam. I just want to mention some of the sectors which are of special interest. This is the manufacturing sector, of course, and then logistics, consumer services, business process outsourcing, engineering, very important, and information technology. These are the sectors which are of great interest for German companies.
Vietnam's vision is to become an industrialized nation by 2020. Accomplishing that requires tens of billions of dollars in infrastructures and technologies. As one of the biggest German corporations in Vietnam, since 1993, Siemens has provided state-of-the-art technology to various public works in the country. In the latest fiscal year, Siemens sales to customers in Vietnam rose to 241 million euros.
If you talk about energy, for example, we are providing top technology for energy, gas turbines in particular, where we know that Vietnam is a country which has a lot of gas, and this is an area we want to do something. Another one is the whole area of traffic management and metro lines. We are very much interested in participating in your metro line too.
BASF, one of the largest chemicals companies in the world, is another long-term investor in Vietnam. In 2013, BASF recorded about 183 million euros in sales to Vietnamese customers, and this figure is set to grow. BASF's core businesses in Vietnam include petrochemicals, engineering plastics, chemicals for electronics, and chemicals for construction.
Vietnam has very good fundamentals. It is developing into a manufacturing hub in Asia Pacific, and for that reason there is a lot of potential for us, ranging from agrochemicals but also into manufacturing industries. We are looking in a very positive way on Vietnam's development, and we want to be part of this development, contribute to Vietnam, and also benefit from this development.
German companies have made significant contributions to manufacturing and high-tech industries in Vietnam. Through the transfer of training and technology, Vietnamese players in these areas are learning the German way of doing business.
Khi chúng ta làm với các đối tác ở Đức thì đừng mong đợi họ sẽ cam kết những số tiền khổng lồ, và chúng ta hãy đợi họ cam kết những vấn đề cụ thể, ví dụ chẳng hạn như vấn đề về đào tạo, vấn đề về chuyển giao công nghệ. Và người Đức là người cẩn thận, chắc chắn, đi rất sâu vào chi tiết. Cho nên nếu mà chúng ta thành công ở những bước đầu tiên, có cái lòng tin và có cơ sở tốt, thì họ cũng sẽ sẵn sàng đầu tư nhiều hơn nữa.
Nước Đức là một nước có nền công nghiệp sản xuất máy móc hàng đầu thế giới. Thì người Đức đầu tư họ cũng mong muốn là họ đầu tư toàn diện, từ nghiên cứu phát triển đến sản xuất đến xuất khẩu. Thì nhà đầu tư Đức là nhà đầu tư rất đáng tin cậy.
Attracting German investment in key sectors like infrastructures and technology is a priority for Vietnam's industrialization process. Beyond that, long-term cooperations with German partners is seen as a solution to sustainable growth in Vietnam.
Sustainable development has been the focus of German government and German companies when cooperating with Vietnam. Based on your knowledge and experience, could you share with us some of the specific projects that German partners have conducted in Vietnam in the field of sustainable development?
Yeah, well, development cooperation with Vietnam is based on the Vietnamese approach of promoting a sustainable growth strategy, the so-called green growth strategy. And Germany is expanding Vietnam, for example, in the renewable energy capacity. Particularly, we are interested in promoting wind energy, which is also very important in Germany. And then, of course, the distribution networks should become more efficient and also expanded. And then we are also cooperating in extensive reforestation projects and in resource protection. And furthermore, Germany is also cooperating very much in the wastewater sector, in the conservation of biodiversity, and in the forest ecosystems. We have an important leather manufacturer, ISA Tantec. They have been named the best tanning company in the world, and they are operating here in Vietnam. They have set up new standards for an environmentally friendly production of leather, and this plant needs 1/3 less energy than comparable production sites in other countries. Mm-hmm. Or the German-based cement sector, for example, I mentioned the companies Lösche and ThyssenKrupp, which is one of the world market leaders in cement production, and they have established eco-friendly technologies and factories here in Vietnam.
Also in related field, high technology is a domain where German companies and researchers have shown expertise. How do you rate the potential of cooperation between Vietnam and Germany in the field of high technology?
Well, high technology, we talk in Germany very often about establishing Industry 4.0. And I think also Vietnam has a great potential for receiving assistance in establishing Industry 4.0. This means to introduce a cyber-physical system where machines, storage and production facilities exchange information, trigger actions and control each other independently. This is very important because the operation processes can be controlled vertically, and so all the production elements can be traced in real time. Mm-hmm. And also Vietnam has, by expanding its industrial production, a very big potential also to introduce right now the standards of Industry 4.0.
Could you cite some specific German projects that are underway or planned in Vietnam's high-tech sector?
Yes, I could mention one of the flagship projects of the German-Vietnamese Strategic Partnership, which is the Vietnamese-German University in Ho Chi Minh City. This university was founded in 2008, focusing on high-tech engineering and sustainable development education. Then I want to mention the Bosch company. Bosch received the high-tech status granted by the Vietnamese government in 2014. And on July 1st, well, more than 1 year ago, Bosch established an automotive research and development center in Ho Chi Minh City. And this new center will initially focus on computer-aided design, simulations and testing, and of automotive technologies. Then we have Siemens. Siemens has introduced some years ago a regional engineer hub, and from this hub Siemens is dispatching their engineers to projects all over the region, and this is very important because the know-how will be developed here in Vietnam. And also I was informed by ThyssenKrupp that they have concentrated their regional engineering hub to Vietnam, and this hub is operating with 150 engineers doing research and development work for ThyssenKrupp.
This German class is an initiative of German Ministry of Economics and Energy to help train young Vietnamese in nursing and healthcare professions. Students here come from different areas across Vietnam, but they all share the same interests in nursing.
Lúc đầu khi mà mới nghe về thông tin về chương trình ấy, em rất là băn khoăn, em không biết là cái chương trình này nó sẽ diễn ra như thế nào. Lúc mà được tham dự chương trình thì em cảm thấy mình là một người rất là may mắn trong số hơn 400 bạn tham gia phỏng vấn, và em sẽ cố gắng học tập để trở thành sinh viên được tiếp tục học và làm việc ở Cộng hòa Liên bang Đức.
The project was launched in 2013. The German Federal Enterprise for International Cooperation, or GIZ, is delegated to carry out the program in Vietnam. In the first year of the program, some 100 students graduated and traveled to Germany. Vietnamese workers are appreciated for their courage, attitude and work ethic.
Thứ nhất là cái trình độ tiếng Đức để mà sang học được cái nghề điều dưỡng ở Cộng hòa Liên bang Đức thì cái trình độ tiếng Đức là phải cao hơn. Năm trước chúng ta đào tạo 7 tháng thì năm nay thống nhất với Đức là sẽ đào tạo 1 năm. Thứ hai là đào tạo chuyên môn, nghề điều dưỡng giữa hai nước có rất nhiều cái khác nhau. Cho nên là năm nay chúng ta rút kinh nghiệm là hai bên đã thống nhất là học viên sẽ sang được đào tạo đầy đủ chương trình của Đức, tức là phải đào tạo 3 năm.
According to experts, the number of people in need of nursing care in Germany will increase sharply from 2.3 to 3.4 million people in 2030. By contrast, Vietnam is very young. 60% of the population was born after 1975. The project shows Germany's commitment to supporting professional development among Vietnamese.
Is a real partnership, so we don't want to exploit people coming to Germany. We want them to have a fair chance, a fair opportunity to learn a professional job and to have the same opportunity like their German colleagues. Yeah? So they should earn the same salary, they should be treated like them, and they should have the same career chances. And this is what we are looking for.
This year marks the 40th anniversary of diplomatic relations between the two countries. The Nursing Care Cooperation Project promises to bring the two nations even closer together, thus paving the way for further cooperation in other fields in the future.
Besides technology transfer and know-how transfer, Germany has always been active in providing vocational training to Vietnam's labor force. Could you tell us more about this kind of cooperation?
Well, judging from the past and the success of the German economy, we know that a well-trained and highly qualified workforce is important for the economic success. And this is why Germany wants to help Vietnam to set up a very qualified workforce. And we are operating now on a small scale still with the Vietnamese German University, with Bosch, with Messer and with B. Braun here in Hanoi to train young Vietnamese people, students, engineers to get higher qualification. And the main goal of this training program is also to include Vietnamese companies to work on the same level and to expand the success of this initial program.
In your opinion, what still stand as challenges facing German investors or enterprises in Vietnam?
Well, Vietnam is very interesting for German investors compared to the entire region because Vietnam has a very young population, so there is a good and qualified workforce, which still can be trained more, which is important for all companies, not only German but also Vietnamese companies. This is also the reason why training in professional training is one of the highlights of our cooperation. Then Vietnam also has a very well developed infrastructure, which is important to link the production, the products to the world market. You need the support from the government to expand in all the areas and you have to tear down trade barriers in many respects, and of course the administrative conditions have to be correct. For example, companies have to be supported to find an ease of doing business, a helpful administration, no lengthy agreement processes for licenses or other requirements for permits.
Vietnam and the European Union are now in the final phase of the negotiation for a free trade agreement. Once this EU-Vietnam free trade agreement is operational, what new opportunities will this trade pact bring to German investors, German enterprises, as well as Vietnamese counterparts?
Well, this new free trade agreement will bring a lot of new opportunities and chances for German, for European companies, and I just want to mention some sectors because Vietnam has made many efforts to open up its market for foreign companies, and the main target areas are certainly the service sectors in Vietnam, including business services, environmental services, postal and courier services, banking, insurance, maritime transport, distribution service, and also higher education. So you see this is a wide variety where European companies can become active after the agreement is in operation. And also the agreement is of course a chance for Vietnamese companies, because Germany can serve as a gateway for Vietnamese companies to develop the European market, which is also very important. So it's trade and exchange in both directions.
Overall, how do you assess the long-term prospects of doing business in Vietnam from a German point of view?
So far, 300 German companies are operating in Vietnam, and they are looking for local and regional markets in the region. And Vietnam is a very important hub for these companies. And speaking of a hub, next year, by January the 1st, you have the ASEAN Free Trade Economic Community. And this is a milestone, certainly, for Vietnam and also for companies already operating in the ASEAN region. And there I see that German and foreign companies have a great interest of being present here and to expand their economic operation in this area.
Well, once again, thank you very much for spending your time with us in our show today.
It was a great pleasure being here.
The soon-to-be signed EU-Vietnam Free Trade Agreement will pave the way for Vietnam and Germany to further strengthen trade cooperation. Germany has remained the biggest trading partner of Vietnam in the EU, as well as among the largest ODA donor to Vietnam for many years. And for Germany's part, Vietnam is gaining an importance as a gateway to doing business in Southeast Asia. The potential for stronger trade cooperation between both partners are indeed looking positive, as evident in the talk with our guest today, Mr. Hans-Jörg Brunner, Chargé d'Affaires of German Embassy in Hanoi. And that's all for this edition of Eastline this week. Thank you very much for being with us. Repeats of our show are all online at vtv4.vn or youtube.com/vtv4go. And from our team here in Hanoi, until next time.